So thank you, and my thanks also to Frank Star Post for continually hosting these events, and thank you for attending. My name is Steve Barker, and it was, we just want to add, leadership is an important proposition at any time. Proper leadership in civil affairs can be crucial, and I believe we're at one of those times when it has become very much a crucial issue all across the land at every level. It was 4 years ago that I was here standing asking for your support. I was asking for you to work with me, to allow me to hold a position. You answered that with your votes, and I've been humble and grateful to be able to serve as your county commissioner these past 4 years since. So thank you for that support. 4 years ago, it's been quite 4 years. It's been 4 years of working very much full-time as a county commissioner to address the issues that have existed in this county and that are in existence and ongoing at all times. I just want to go back over a few things that I feel like we've been able to touch and accomplish during that 4 years to date. Beginning with, one of the primary concerns and one of the primary duties of the county commission is to be responsible for the county budget. Today, after 4 years of serving, we have a better budget than when we came into office. We have better processes that have been established for clarity, for being able to track the budget, and for being able to make good budgetary decisions by departments. We make the budget decisions for every office in the county, including the sheriff's budget, which is large, including the assessor's budget, which is not as large, but just as crucial. Thank you for being here tonight, and all of the other departments. So we've taken that very, very seriously and always taken a good, strong look to make sure that we are asking the right questions and that we're bringing clarity both to help other department heads and elected officials make good decisions about their own budgets, and so that when we approve a budget, we know we're approving the proper amounts and the proper things. I made a pledge when I ran last year, that pledge is still good, that I will not vote for a tax increase. I will not support new taxes in Stevens County. And I do that because I have a firm belief that government does not have a problem with too little money. Government has a problem because we overtax and overregulate the people. During this 4 years, along with the budget, we have been able to keep spending down. Thank you, one of the things that we've done is to work very, very diligently with state agencies, primarily to protect against unnecessary and egregious regulations that would harm private property. We have worked with the U.S. Forest Service. This has been quite a process. When we stepped into office, there was the ongoing forest plan revision, determining how to look at the Colville National Forest, determining what the best practices are to protect, maintain, and to produce economic benefit for this area. And I took primary lead on forest issue things. We've worked very, very hard to develop the kind of relationships with Forest Service personnel, to become familiar with their processes and their plans, and to be very, very aggressive to try and correct anything we see that would be unable to be of economic benefit to the county. And importantly, we've worked to provide better services for our veteran friends all across the county. And we've had a variety of ways of doing that, including helping to support your own good efforts here at the Frank Star Post, providing for a warming shelter for all populations through the wintertime, and providing offices in our own commissioner's headquarters so that there's a place for people to come in, get the information, and get the services they deserve. You've heard me saying we a lot. It's because I work with two other commissioners. We work very well as a team. We each have strengths. We each try to apply those strengths so that we do function as a team, and it's been a great process. Not that we agree all the time, but we have figured out how to make things work. 4 years ago, you honored my request to support me with your votes. Today I'm going to ask you, allow me to continue the work that I've done with you, for the county, and ask you, please support me once again with your vote. Thank you very much.
Okay, Crystal.
Same question as I asked the previous candidate. What about the jail overcrowding issue and what is on the table in terms of addressing it?
Yeah, it's a big problem, and I wish I could say that we have a solution on the horizon. I think you may know that years ago they tried to design and build a new jail. It got so expensive that everything was scrapped. There was just no way to afford it. The solutions that are in place right now are temporary at best. They do work. We rent jail space from other counties. It does cost them to transport, and it's one of those things we've talked about time to time as commissioners. What is it that we can do? Probably the real crux of the issue is anytime you try to build new construction these days, the demands are such that there are so many requirements for the things that need to be there that it makes the price tag impossible without putting an undue taxable burden on the residents of the county. So,
But is that the only option though, is building another jail? Or?
well, we have had some people come in and look at redesigning the facility that's there to see if there's a way that we can be more efficient with the space, that we can use spaces that are not being utilized to their greatest degree in the existing jail environment. But the security requirements, all of those, the safety for the personnel, the safety for the inmates, does make it difficult. There may be some short-term fixes that we can do that are affordable. Kind of looking at that right now. The sheriff primarily takes responsibility for trying to come up with those plans, along with working with Lauren, to see if there are things that we can do that aren't constructing a brand new facility.
Okay, Kim.
What's your position on work release to alleviate the overcrowding in the jail? Yes or no?
Would I support work release?
Yes.
Yes. Ma'am.
Okay, Hillary.
Yes, I attended the Lavoy Finicum tribute that you hosted after the occupation down in Oregon, and you showed a film there that I believe implied that the BLM was burning out people's properties, for whatever purpose. And I'm wondering if you still, or if you believe that the BLM has burned out people's residence, and if you support the illegal occupation in Oregon, or if you don't think it was illegal, perhaps. Please respond. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's interesting to be here now after 4 years. There are a lot of things that we can look at and say, what was going on there? Quick background, the occupation of the Mount Hero Refuge was come about to protest an issue that had happened in Harney County, and that was a family, or a father and son, that had been jailed as domestic terrorists because they lit a fire that burned off of their land and burned onto federal land. Now, was there malicious intent involved? I wasn't in the... It doesn't sound like it. They were protecting their land by lighting a backfire. The film that you referenced was made by ranchers in a different location as they were scurrying to protect and use their corrals where they had cattle. They were trying to push cattle that had already been burned. And they said these are BLM fires that they're lighting to backburn to protect other areas. Fire is a dangerous thing. We get that. So the issue is, if a private citizen causes a fire to burn, and I don't think they burned any livestock, they didn't burn any buildings, it burned on the land. and that rises to the level of being a domestic terrorist. But if the BLM lights backfires to protect what they think and it destroys homes and property, where's the disparity? Why is one dealt with one way and one the other? So I could try and dodge the last part, but you said, was it an illegal occupation? Certainly it was, according to the law. Is it simple disobedience? Is it somebody trying to make a point? And the Lavoy-Finicum protest is, should people really be targeted that way because they're trying to stand up and say, this is not right, there's a better way to do things? And my whole point is, would we ever want something like that to happen in Stevens County? I don't think so. When the sheriff and I discussed it, because he had some questions too, because this is a law enforcement issue and it's a real one. I said, Sheriff, it should never happen in this county. He said, what would happen if those people came in here and they occupied your office? I said, if they came in and they occupied the commissioner's office, I would walk in, shut the door, and say, boys, we don't want any trouble here. And nobody's going to get hurt. We don't want you hurting anybody, and I'll do my best to make sure nobody hurts you. Now, what do we need to talk about?
So
Okay,
do you,
Bill.
okay.
Yeah, in a budget that the commissioners presented to trying to think of it. Anyway, it was a budget that you presented, and homelessness in this area seems to become an issue. And your budget at the end of 2016, Chamber of Commerce is where you presented. Your budget at the end of 2016, according to your carryover, is going to be in the neighborhood of $450,000 for homeless. What are your plans as far as that money is concerned in dealing with homelessness within Stevens County?
Well, we use that money in a lot of different ways right now to support the efforts to provide for people who are here either on a short-term or long-term basis and do not have a home. Some of that money goes to, most of it runs through rural resources in terms of accessing services and places. Some of that money was used to acquire the old Border Patrol office, and that was converted into a shelter for men for homelessness. We used some of that money here for the Frank Star Post to use volunteer services to provide for warming shelters. So we have those kind of things that are in effect in terms of taking a big piece of money and applying it to another project. We make the best decisions that we can in terms of what comes to us to see what we can support and at what level we can support it, and try and be a part of that solution as we can.
Can I follow up with a little?
Yeah, go further.
That budget actually grew from 2015 to 2016. What would you see as a way to actually put those monies into effect? I don't think you need to zero out $450,000.
Thank you.
But I think you can spend a significantly larger amount of money. So how would you approach that issue? Because face it, whether we like it or not, homelessness is growing.
So the best answer that I can give you is, bring me a good project, bring me a solution. We'll see if we can work together on it.
May I throw one back? That's really your job. That's what you just got done telling us in your introduction. I think that's what you need to be working on.
Frankly, I have a lot of issues, a lot of jobs that I take on, and we do look we're very open and look very longingly for solutions to come from the grassroots up. If those good solutions are out there, there are things that we can do. That money does come in through the auditor's filing charges. Anytime you document recording fees, the state mandated an increase in those fees so that they can be used for this issue. So We have some funds, we need good ideas, we need solutions that we can come behind and support.
Okay, Nina.
How much involvement do you as commissioners have to do with the incident that happened down in Hunters last year? That there was 4 of us that were actually witnesses to it. A bullet missed me and went into Mick's truck, missed me by a foot, by a sheriff or an officer's gun. And the papers, the interviews were total lies. They said that I had my back turned, didn't see what was going on. Well, I guarantee you, when someone's shooting, you don't have your back turned. I was hitting the bushes. There was a stray bullet. It was totally dropped. We were told we were liars. Investigation is just dropped. The young man had not fired at that officer. We had 5 witnesses. What does the commissioners have to do with that, with the sheriff department? What?
Quite honestly, we were observers just through the newspaper reports and things. It's not anything that we have direct involvement in. Law enforcement is a totally separate elected department. And so we heard reports and we heard there were conflicting reports. That's about as far as it went, unfortunately.
So as a citizen, can I come to you and say, that's not right, that's not what happened?
You certainly can. You certainly can.
Because, I mean,
I don't know that we have solutions for you. Again, those legal processes are the avenues that you have access for redress agreements in those areas. But, you know, you always have access to your commissioners.
Okay, anybody else got a question? Okay,
So do you support the privatization of federal lands?
I've been working with the American Lands Council for several years. In fact, in a couple of weeks, I'll be going to attend their national convention. Once a year we get together. I believe they've done good work looking at the legal and historical issues that surround the land base in the United States and why some states have maybe not total control, but have primary control over up to 90 to 95% of their land, and why the states in the West have been denied that same opportunity, because prosperity comes from the land. There is no wealth that doesn't come out of the ground, either by something that is grown or something that is extracted. And I think that we have a decided disadvantage, especially in the more rural parts, by not having more local input and more local decision-making on land issues. And does that, you use the word privatization, and I've never discussed that aspect of it. I know that there are tremendous problems that can occur with privately regulated land, but I also know that the Forest Service needs help, because we do have fire problems, we do have forests that are not being properly maintained, and our own State Department of Natural Resources, who is also a tremendous firefighting agency, has a much better track record of bringing economy from the forests than the U.S. Forest Service does.
When you say you're
Okay,
working with
go
the
ahead.
American Lands Council, that's a group that you give money to as part of the county commissioners, is that right?
Yes, we support them to the tune of $1,000 a year.
And that was our money that you paid them?
Correct.
And they want to get rid of federal lands?
They would like to see states have the ability to be decision makers on their land, so yes.
How would you see that happen? Who would get to get the land? How would that work?
It would revert back to the states.
Revert back? Did they used to own it?
Well, it's a little bit more of a complicated issue. I'd love to spend a half an hour with you going over that. But when you look at the history of the United States and go back into some of the things that transpired, this isn't the first time this has happened. States that were in the western frontiers years ago had to fight to get their lands freed and returned from federal ownership to state ownership. And those states were things like Illinois, Kentucky, Florida, Missouri. This was back in the early 1800s. It's always been a struggle. But I believe it's the right thing to do.
Okay, Wes.
Steve, I'm a local cattleman. There's been 5 generations of my family run on the same piece of ground. The biggest challenge I have today is keeping all that ground together in an ecological, financial kind of unit. There's more and more pressure from people from Seattle, from Los Angeles, everywhere else, to come in and buy that ground that we've run on, because we've done such a good job of it that they like our pristine conditions. They like the conditions of our pasture, of our grazing. I think it's an absolute cheap shot for someone to stand up and take aim at us. For 1 or 2 road cattlemen, they want to batch everybody in the same basket and blame us for the sins of the world. I think that's very poor. I would like to know what your position is on cattle industry in our local area.
The cattle industry across the West is tremendously important. The cattle industry in Stevens County is tremendously important. It's the lifestyle that many of us were drawn to when we came to this country. Not whether it was cattle or just the open spaces. But here's the other part of that, Wes. If we don't have cattle grazing, we create conditions on the public lands where we actually increase fuel loads, where the land begins to deteriorate. There's a great relationship between having grazing occurring out in the open spaces and safety and health. So, are there issues that come up with range policy? Yes, there are. There are issues that come up with every aspect of life that we live. So, I tend to default to where you are. I would rather see us work individually with people that are having problems being good neighbors than try and penalize everybody that's already being a good neighbor.
Well, John.
Steve, we hear a lot about the Northeast County, Tri-County Health District, and that there's some sort of a plot to dismantle that and put it out of the commission. What's behind that? What can you tell us on that?
Probably me, because I'm a board member for Tri-County Health, and I've had a default position, and not in opposition with the other commissioners at all. We try to work together on these things, but when we go through transition periods and we see things that are happening, we've done this a couple of times. Tri-County Health was formed in 1970, somebody helped me, 468. That doesn't sound like a long time ago to me because I lived through that era, but when you start doing the math, that's 40 plus years. I think it's diligent to go back and re-examine the foundations for why a decision was made, how things were put together, and the effectiveness today. So we've done that with Tri-County Health. When our administrator gave his resignation and took another position, he said, this is a good time to go back and re-examine. Do we want to continue as a 3-county health district, or would we be better served to be a 1-county health district? We decided to remain a 3-county district because we have so much already wrapped up in that, and we do have history. But you have to understand, across the state, there are only 2 other districts that work across county lines. Every other one's a single county district. So the district is alive and well. We have good staff. The services are still being provided, and the commissioners have not asked for any program to be cut. There are some things that the state has stopped funding and that they've made decisions to come back, which I really support. Foundational public health services. What is public health's primary duty to carry out? Let's do that one, do those, do them well, and not get caught up in ancillary services that can be done in the private sector.
Bill.
Yeah, in terms of Tri-County Health, I think I heard at that meeting that in the 1990s there were like 40 employees in Tri-County Health, and today there's someone in the neighborhood of 19. Why is that reduction there when the number of people being served by Tri-County Health and the issues that we face have increased?
I think the numbers are a little different, Bill. Higher at the front side and higher today.
It was said 19 at that meeting, and it was said it was in the 40s.
But there has been a tremendous reduction, well, there's been a significant reduction in personnel. That was done prior to my being a commissioner, and I couldn't go into the details of how that transition took place, but I know it did take place. And actually, it's taken place across a lot of levels of county government. Our Public Works Department is significantly less than it was, and other departments are running at a lower staff level. Part of it is because of the economic downturn, and part of it were other decisions made primarily by department heads and people that are running our shows.